So I guess as you are watching this video, you are interested in the Omega Speedmaster Automatic, and if that is the case, guys, you are in the right place, because in this video I don't just look at the outside of the watch and talk vaguely about the movement and the chronograph module that drives it. I have taken it completely apart and put it back together again because it's my job. My name is Richard Perrett, I'm a watchmaker, and in this review we are going to finish the analysis on this really important piece by Omega. For the main part of the movement, which you can see actually has a lot less components, which means, you know, when you're working on a chronograph watch, there's a hell of a lot more work to do than there is on a normal automatic watch. Anyway, we've cleaned, as you can see. So I'm starting the reassembly with the chronograph module, and a good thing to do before you start putting components back into a main plate like this is just check the individual jewels to make sure they are looking good. And we're back with the tension spring here for the minute hand pivot, and you can see it's putting tension on it there. Guys, when you're putting this back in, put it in from the top, then tuck it behind the second hand pivot there, and the last thing you want to get in location is it's seated properly behind the stud on the right hand side. Okay, what I suggest you don't try and do is get it seated on the two studs and then try and flip it right over the pivot, because if you do that you're going to distort it and it won't do its job. But this little part of the mechanism now is all back in and looking good and really up nice and close. Now I'm just putting in one of the last components into the chronograph module, and I was looking under the loop at how I had done the lubrication of this little slot, and as you can see, guys, this is the way not to do it. The lubrication is just sat on the top there, and it's not actually inside the little groove, so it's going to have no effect. And also then, you know, it's lubrication that can just travel around the watch. So guys, I'm just going to give you a shot now of how this should be done. Okay, it's the same component, just having difficulty focusing on it here a little bit, and I'll show you the scale of this in a moment. But you know, this is much more like it. You can, I can hardly see it, but I have been in there with an oiler and a little bit of grease, and guys, if you can't see it but you know you've been in there with it, it is way better than the huge amount of lubrication that and some people wouldn't consider that huge actually, that I showed you a moment ago. But let's see the size of the thing we're dealing with here, and this just then gives you an idea of the scale that we're dealing with here, because I've just put the stem and crown next to this component, but getting the lubrication on all these tiny little components is what doing the service is all about, and getting the lubrication right. So let's finish up the chronograph module. And with a little bit of music here playing in the background, we've now got the top plate of the chronograph module back on here. And a top tip with this is just to spend some time making sure that everything is absolutely in place before you try and put the top plate back on, because as you can see, it is one whole plate and there are quite a lot of pivots and things to get in place. If you spend that time making sure that everything's lined up, at least in this case it just pops straight on. It was actually a joy to do it. So gonna secure that now with the 3 retention screws and then test its operation before we move on to the main part of the movement. And have finished the chronograph module there, so now turning my attention to the main plate itself of the main part of the module, and as you can see, this is now looking really clean and shiny. So I'm going to start with the keyless works here and then flip over and put in the mainspring and the barrel bridge. So just going to do that now. And before I move on, I just want to discuss an interesting design feature in this little ETA movement, and that is this powertrain cock here. You can see that I've just left it hanging without the wheels in, and there it is held in place. I've just left it at the bottom here at the moment by this one single screw that goes in here. Now, to me, that is a single point of failure. If the watchmaker does not tighten this screw properly, then the whole powertrain is gonna come unstuck. But on the other hand, even if there was an individual cock for each of the wheels in the powertrain, as you would tend to get with some of the older pocket watches, I think that's even less reliable because of the probability of an error. But I can't decide whether it would be more reliable to have a fixture here like a bridge with another screw, and I think it probably would. So I think this rests somewhere between an old pocket watch and a fully formed plate bridge with 3 screws in it, which would probably be the ideal solution. Anyway, if you know more about the mathematics and design of that, then please put it in the comments. It's just an interesting feature in this little movement, and I think the train looks great under there, but is it good design? I don't really know. So I'll be interested on your comments on that, please. Anyway, we are getting reasonably close now. The keyless works are in, the balance bridge is in. As you can see, I've tested all that. I'm going to put the train in now, test that, and then put the pallets in, and we're getting good. And this is how the powertrain should look once you've got it all in. Do not tighten that big screw down until you can see, if you've put a little bit of power on the train, that it works like this. And as you can see, we're getting close now, and this movement is really shiny. That's good. And the balance is now back in and looking really frisky there, which is for want of a better word, it looks good. So, and nice and shiny and serviced. So going to stick on the automatic works and then marry the movement up with the chronograph module. Put the dial on, some hands, and put it back in the case, and we're good. And you can see that I have now got the new glass in the case, and also that the bracelet has been cleaned. The bezel, it's best to remove the bezel for this. I don't think it's possible to do it without doing that, so you're going to need to remove the bezel. And the glass has on this, or the Hesalite as I should say, on this particular watch has a steel reinforcing ring to keep it nice and tight against the case. And that's a little bit of an issue because you're going to need quite a degree of force with your glass press to put it into the case, but it is not that hard a material, so you can't use so much force that you actually crack the Hesalite. So there's a difficult balance to be won there. I'll just show you that reinforced steel ring now. And this is what I'm talking about here, this steel ring which sandwiches in the outside of the Hesalite to the case and keeps it nice and firmly in place. Okay, you're going to have a little battle on your hands to make sure that it goes in, and you need to be very careful, otherwise you will split the Hesalite, which will cost you money, so and time, because you'll need to go and get another one. So yeah, you need to be careful with that. And the dial is back on now, and I've just checked I've just put it in the case with the single chronograph sweep hand on, and checked the operation of the chronograph, and it flies back nicely. So it is actually in the flyback position now, which means that all the hands should be pointing straight upwards, or at least the chronograph ones. So I am now going to put all the hands on and put it back in the case, which is nice and clean. So we are getting close now to the end of a reasonably epic service on this Omega Speedmaster Automatic. And as I come in there on the dial, there's one thing that is pretty important that you do at this stage, guys, and that is just to make sure that you clean the dial. In fact, I can just see a little bit of gunk on the bottom sub dial around the 9 there, so you just need to get in with a bit of Rodico, make sure that that's all cleaned up before you put it back in the case. There's nothing worse than doing all the work, get it in the case, get it all working, and then suddenly notice a lump. So we now have that ETA movement joined to the chronograph module. It's all looking very, very shiny there in the new shiny case, as you can see. And if we flick now to the time grapher, we can see what the trace is. We're on 0 seconds a day. The amplitude is back up there and increasing to right where it should be. This is much more what the trace should look like. The amplitude increasing, as you can see, to 290. It's a very nice high amplitude. We've got 0 beat error. The lift angle is exactly where it should be. This watch is now performing exactly as Omega intended it to perform in the first place. So very, very happy with that. Guys, I have a website. Who knew? And I recommend it to you because for my biggest videos, the ones that I think are going to do really well, and actually also the ones that I am most interested in, I do a complimentary written review on my website, which refers back to the video view, and this is the one for the Vostok amphibian that I did recently. And these reviews have a little bit more detail than you get in the video. Now I will be doing one for the Omega Speedmaster Automatic, so stay tuned. And this is at as you can see at the top here, worldwideweb.richardperrett.com, or you can just search Richard Perrett Watchmaker and you will find this site pretty quickly. But I commend it to you. There is a lot of good detailed information here. Now let's crack on with the Omega Speedmaster Automatic. Now this is a really sweet moment because we have now got the whole movement, the hands back on, all put back in the nice shiny case. The only thing that's not gone back on now is the bezel, and I'll do that at the end because you have to line that up exactly with the second hand, which, as you can see, I've got absolutely smack on there. So it's very important that you line these hands up very, very accurately. I still have the back off the watch at this point because until I run this final little test, I don't know whether anything is I'm going to need to take it out again. But we're just going to check the chronograph now for a second time before I put the back on, and then put the bezel and the bracelet on, and then I am going to do a kind of summary of these two videos on this watch, and if you haven't watched the first one, I recommend that before you watch the summary. There will be a card appearing now which will take you back to the first video. But anyway, let's just check the chronograph function. Remember, to start it we use this pusher at the top. We also use that pusher to stop it, and then to reset it we put the pusher here at the bottom. The two hands that we're watching is the chronograph hand here and the one that is counting up the minutes here. So let us just run that now. So just click it, and it starts very, very nice. It's a very positive click, and that hand is off. Now what we're going to do is just focus in on the dial on the left there. Now you may think the visibility through the new Hess-like crystal here is a little bit mushy. That's because it's still got the protective polythene cover on it. I never take that off. I would deliver that back to the owner of the watch, who then has the pleasure of taking that off. And you can see now that that sub-dial hand is actually moving exactly as it should. We're coming up to 2:15 now, so we will just watch that, and it's important that these hands are aligned properly. So as it crosses the 60 at the top, we should be pretty much smack on 1 minute, and you can see that we are. We're just going to come out again now to watch. So that's in. Come out again now to watch the reset, and I'm just going to stop it and reset it. And both of those hands should fly back in an instant if we are good. So let us now come in here and stop the chronograph. Again, it's a very positive stop, and then push the reset, pop, and you don't even see it. They are both back in. If we just track in, we are smack on there at the top, and we are smack on there at the sub dial. So, you know, very, very pleased with that. So that's a sub dial there. And so, yeah, we are looking very, very, very nice here. It's a lot of work, a service like this. So it's always very, very pleasing to see the watch. You know, it had a full service, amplitude is up, all the functions are running nicely. It's an important piece to the guy that owns this watch. So I'll be very, very delighted to send this back to him in this new refreshed state. So let's summarize now on what we think of the Omega Speedmaster Automatic, and I think you'll be interested. I'd stick with this because I think you'll be interested in what I've got to say, because you know there's some good and there is some, you know, some realism to be added to this watch. So let's move on to the culmination of these two videos now. Okay, so it's just past 3:15 in the afternoon, as you can see, and the chronometer here is working nicely and surrounded by a very few of the very many tools that I have to employ in a service of a complex watch like that, and that includes the poker chip that you can see there. So anyone who knows what I used that for in this service should put it in the comments. If I had a gift to give you, I'd give it honest, but I don't. So just for the fun of it, guys, if you know what I use that for, then let me know. So let's now focus in on this Omega Speedmaster Automatic, and I'm going to deal with the complexity of the analysis, let alone the complexity of the watch, in 3 areas. So we're going to look at the engineering and build quality, the design and the implementation of that design. We're going to look at some other factors like the looks, the heritage and that sort of thing. And finally, I'll sum up with value for money. And I'm going to be pretty succinct because there is really just one overriding message that I want to get across here. The engineering build quality, this, guys, is a really, really nicely conceived chronograph and very nicely implemented chronograph by Omega. The notion that you can take an existing ETA movement, which is, you know, tried and tested, and bolt on to the front of it something which is optimized for providing the chronograph functions that you can see in front of you, is not a silly notion. The proof of the pudding is right there in front of you. The chronograph functions on this watch work really, really nicely. So what's the catch? Well, there isn't one really, other than the complexity involved with achieving that modular design. Now you might think that that's a contradiction in terms, because we use modular design to limit complexity, or at least encapsulate it within the boundaries of each assembly. The first assembly being the engine, the ETA movement, and the other assembly being the Dubois Desprez. That's my French again. Chronograph modules. So the chronograph module itself has a reputation for being difficult to service, and I can testify to that. It is a complex and reasonably fiddly piece of kit, and you have to do everything exactly as Omega intended, and it doesn't really take prisoners, this chronograph module. It requires a lot of attention to detail and a lot of focus to get it right. Case in point was that tiny little jewel that I described to you during the process, and I can't remember which video it was in, whether it was the first or second, but yeah, in the mechanism there is one very tiny jewel, which for example would be very easy to lose whilst you're cleaning this watch, which would not be great. So as long as the watch is properly maintained by somebody capable of doing that maintenance, then you have here a really excellent chronograph. Everything else about it, the movement is good, the chronograph module is good, the case is good, the bezel is good, the pushers are good, the bracelet is good. I like the Hesalite. I like the way it locks in firmly with the steel reinforcing ring. It is all good, but it does require expert attention from time to time. And I know, guys, in the forums there's lots of talk about the cost of servicing this, and I will move on to that in a moment, and problems that people have with this watch from time to time. And that may be because from time to time, you know, it's serviced maybe, you know, as not as expertly as it might have been. And if you do that with a mechanism like this chronograph module, it is going to be pretty unforgiving, I feel. So that is the engineering build quality. The concept is really good. The execution of that concept is also very good. So, you know, if I was to score that, I would score that a 9 out of 10 for engineering build quality, maybe even a 9.5. The other factors, looks, heritage, that kind of stuff. You know, the watch has this grey NASA heritage. You know, I know this watch didn't go to the moon. I know it's not the same watch as the professional. You know, that the rotor arm would be a lot less efficient on the surface of the moon because gravity is a lot less there. The astronauts didn't take this watch. They took the professional, which is a wind-up watch. I know all that, but still this watch has the look and that heritage. There's no getting away from it. This watch shouts at you when it's on your wrist. NASA 1969, 1970, 1971. And guys, that is cool. I mean, that is cool because, you know, those guys that were involved in that business of taking guys to the moon, you know, that is full on. And those guys, you know, were brilliant, and America and the whole world should be proud of them. And when you wear this watch, you are giving a little bit of a nod to that to anyone that's in the know. So I think that's really important. The other thing, as I said at the start of the first video, I think the watch looks great. It's understated, it's classy. I think it's a really good looking watch. So value for money. Oh, so I ought to score actually the looks and heritage. And again, I'm going to score it a 9 out of 10. Maybe a 9.5 out of 10 because, hey, you know, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin stepped out of, you know, the Eagle onto the moon surface with a watch by this company that looked like this. That, guys, is massive. That is massive. Omega know it. The whole world knows it. And you know, it's a really, really powerful thing, that. So turning then lastly to value for money. Oh, I still didn't score it. Oh, maybe I did. 9.5. Let's go on. Value for money. Focus on value for money. So guys, you can pick this watch up for round about £2,000, you know, $2,000 and a bit on, you know, the marketplace out there. And when I looked at the trace on this watch, and you're going to see the original trace pop down here first. That was the one that, you know, when I first got hold of the watch, their amplitude was low. The you know, it's gaining a minute and a half a day. That's not ideal, but I could immediately see that the movement was great. It was a good solid beat, and it was in beat. And when we finished the service, and if you look at the trace, you can see now this trace is, you know, this is a good trace, guys. This is, we got an amplitude of 290. We've got 0 seconds a day or thereabouts. You know, this is, we're in Rolex, you know, chronometer territory here. So this is really, really good. And you're looking at a watch that doesn't cost anywhere near what a Daytona costs. I mean, a fraction of it. So with all of that, the value for money for the purchase price is very, very high now. But coming on then to the little catch that flies back to what I said about the engineering build quality, and that is the cost of maintenance. Maintaining a watch like this is going to cost some money. You know, every 5, 6, 7 years, you should expect to pay double what you would pay for a normal automatic watch, high quality watch, because the work inside it is double for the watchmaker. If you do send it to a watchmaker or back to Omega, you need to make absolutely sure of what they are servicing, because word on the street is that, you know, if a watchmaker finds that the amplitude is not too low on this model, then quite often they won't even break open the chronograph module. They'll just service the ETA movement. So I'm going to score the value for money for this watch at 8, and it's dragged up by everything else. It would be down at 7, but everything else drags it up. You know, you are getting a hell of a lot of watch here, a hell of a lot of good looks, a hell of a lot of technology, a hell of a lot of heritage for roundabout, you know, and I'm recording this in the tail end of the summer in 2019, and it's standing around £2,000 sterling at that time. Guys, that's it for the Omega Speedmaster Automatic, and I didn't achieve my aim. You can see that we started on about 7 minutes and we're now at something horrendous. So, you know, I've taken at least 12 or so minutes to sum up here, but I make no apology for that. This is a important piece, and we have given it a full and comprehensive service and a full analysis of the watch. Guys, if you like my videos, then please subscribe. I'm trying to create the best content for analysis of watches that can be found anywhere on the internet, and with this watch in front of me, I should say the Galaxy. So yeah, please subscribe. Please hit the little bell icon so you know when I have uploaded a new video. But from a rainy afternoon here, which isn't a completely unusual event, in southwest Wales in the United Kingdom, in a place called Pembroke Dock. It's time for me now to sign off and say goodbye and go and get a nice cup of coffee and a piece of chocolate. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. But from Pembroke Dock, cheerio for now, and God bless.